The call came at 9:17 in the morning, at the exact moment when the world still looked ordinary and safe, when sunlight slipped gently through the office windows and the hum of keyboards filled the air like a familiar song. In less than 60 seconds, Alina Qureshi's life collapsed with the quiet cruelty of a house of glass. There was no warning, no dramatic storm, no ominous music, just a voice on the other end of the line, and a sentence that shattered everything she believed was permanent. By the time the phone slid from her trembling fingers, the future she had carefully built no longer existed. In a single day, she lost her job, her home, and the one person she thought would always stand beside her. Grief did not knock. It arrived like an earthquake. If you believe in kindness, in miracles that wear ordinary faces, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, because stories like this remind us that compassion lives everywhere, often in places we least expect. Alina had always been the kind of woman people described as steady, the type who organized her dreams into neat lists and believed discipline could protect her from chaos. She came from a modest background where stability was a luxury, and every achievement carried the weight of sacrifice. Years of relentless effort had earned her a respected position at a marketing firm, a small but beautiful apartment, and the fragile sense that life was finally beginning to reward her persistence. She had routines that comforted her, plans that stretched years ahead, and a quiet confidence that tomorrow would resemble today. That illusion vanished before lunch. The job loss came first, delivered with corporate politeness and devastating efficiency. Restructuring, budget cuts, unavoidable decisions, phrases that sounded abstract until they landed directly on her existence. Alina listened as if someone were describing another person's misfortune, her mind refusing to connect the words with reality. The office, once a place of ambition and belonging, suddenly felt foreign. Colleagues avoided her eyes, sympathy mixing awkwardly with relief that they were not the ones leaving. She packed her desk in silence, each object transformed into a relic of a life that had ended without ceremony. When the elevator doors closed, she was no longer an employee, no longer part of the world she had known that very morning. But fate was not finished. By mid-afternoon, another blow arrived, colder and more intimate. The apartment she rented, her sanctuary, her proof of independence, was no longer hers to keep. A legal dispute between the landlord and the building's owners had escalated, forcing tenants to vacate within days. It was the kind of bureaucratic tragedy that felt almost absurd in its timing. Alina read the notice repeatedly, hoping some hidden line would reverse its meaning. Instead, the words remained cruelly consistent. Homelessness was no longer a distant fear. It was an approaching certainty. Still, the deepest wound awaited her at home, disguised as familiarity. For months, tension had crept into her relationship with Samir, the man who had once made uncertainty feel manageable. They had shared dreams, fears, the quiet language of two people building a future together. Yet hardship has a way of exposing fractures love alone cannot mend. When Alina told him about the job, about the apartment, she searched his face for reassurance, for the strength she desperately needed. What she found instead was exhaustion, frustration, and finally a decision that felt like betrayal wrapped in resignation. Samir, overwhelmed by his own struggles, chose to walk away from a life suddenly burdened by instability. He did not leave in anger or cruelty. He left in self-preservation. The effect was the same. The door closed, and Alina stood alone in the echoing silence of a home already slipping from her grasp. Night fell with a suffocating heaviness. The city outside continued its indifferent rhythm, traffic lights blinking, vendors calling, laughter drifting from distant balconies. Inside, Alina sat on the floor surrounded by half-packed boxes, the physical evidence of disintegration. Shock gradually surrendered to despair, a thick, consuming darkness that made breathing feel optional. Every certainty had been stripped away. Every identity she held, professional, partner, tenant, had dissolved within hours. She wondered how a single day could possess such destructive power, how existence could pivot so violently without explanation. The following weeks blurred into a landscape of rejection and quiet humiliation. Job applications vanished into silence. Savings evaporated under the pressure of temporary lodging and basic survival. Friends offered sympathy, but carried lives too full to accommodate her indefinitely. Alina learned the peculiar loneliness of public spaces, the exhaustion of pretending resilience, the weight of invisible anxiety. The world had not become hostile. It had simply become indifferent, which was somehow worse. She felt like a ghost wandering through a life that no longer recognized her. And then, on a morning that began with nothing remarkable, something unexpected happened. It was at a small co-working cafe, a place Alina visited not for productivity, but for the illusion of belonging. Surrounded by strangers absorbed in their own pursuits, she could briefly forget the precariousness of her situation. That day, fatigue pressed heavily on her shoulders. Sleep had been elusive, hope increasingly fragile. She stared at her laptop, not truly seeing the screen, when a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere drew her attention. A man was walking toward her table holding a vibrant bouquet of sunflowers and soft pink roses, his expression marked by a gentle nervousness that seemed oddly sincere. His name was Rahim Ansari, though Alina would only learn that later. In that moment, he was simply an interruption, unexpected, slightly bewildering, impossible to categorize. He was not dressed extravagantly, nor did he carry the polished confidence of someone performing a grand gesture. There was something disarmingly ordinary about him, something that made the flowers appear less like a spectacle and more like an offering of simple humanity. Rahim had noticed Alina weeks earlier, not with romantic intention, but with quiet concern. He saw the subtle signs of struggle familiar to anyone who had endured their own storms. The forced composure, the distant gaze, the exhaustion no amount of coffee could disguise. Rahim, once a man who had lost nearly everything himself, recognized despair with uncomfortable clarity. He understood the dangerous isolation of believing one's pain was invisible, that one's existence had become inconsequential. And so, guided by an instinct that defied logic and social caution, he decided to do something absurdly small, yet profoundly risky: acknowledge a stranger's sadness. He placed the bouquet gently on her table, offering not a rehearsed speech but a presence that felt steady and unintrusive. The gesture was so unexpected, so devoid of hidden agenda, that Alina's carefully constructed emotional defenses faltered. No one had seen her, not truly seen her, in months. Kindness, when it finally appeared, felt almost unbearable. What followed was not a sudden transformation or cinematic miracle. There was no immediate solution to her problems, no dramatic reversal of fortune. Instead, something subtler began to unfold. Rahim's compassion carried no conditions, no urgency, no demand for reciprocation. He spoke with the calm honesty of someone who understood fragility, sharing fragments of his own history marked by failure, recovery, and the slow reconstruction of self-worth. In his company, Alina did not feel judged or pitied. She felt understood. Days turned into conversations into an unlikely friendship that gradually illuminated possibilities Alina had ceased to imagine. Rahim did not rescue her. He reminded her she was not beyond saving. He encouraged without pressuring, listened without interrupting, believed without doubting. Under the quiet influence of consistent empathy, Alina's perspective began to shift. The losses, once perceived as final verdicts, slowly reconfigured into painful yet survivable chapters. The future, though uncertain, no longer appeared entirely hostile. With renewed determination, Alina rebuilt. Not dramatically, not effortlessly, but persistently. A freelance opportunity emerged, then another. A modest apartment replaced temporary shelter. Confidence, once shattered, cautiously reassembled itself through small victories. Throughout the process, Rahim remained a constant, never imposing, never claiming credit, simply present. His faith in her resilience often exceeded her own. Years later, Alina would struggle to articulate the full significance of that morning in the cafe. It was not merely the flowers, though they became a cherished memory. It was the radical simplicity of being seen, the extraordinary power of unsolicited kindness, the reminder that a single human gesture can interrupt despair's momentum. Rahim did not change her destiny through wealth or influence. He altered its trajectory through compassion. If this story has touched your heart even slightly, take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who may be fighting silent battles. Your small action could carry more meaning than you realize. Before we reach the end, there is one special request. Leave a comment with the word hope, a simple reminder that even in our darkest moments, light can arrive in the most unexpected forms. Alina's life did not become perfect. No life ever does. Challenges persisted, uncertainties remained, and scars never fully vanished. But the difference was profound and enduring. She no longer measured existence solely by stability or success. She understood the fragile interconnectedness of human experience, the quiet heroism of empathy, the truth that sometimes the most life-altering gifts are not solutions, but reminders of worth. Because in a world obsessed with grand achievements and dramatic transformations, it is easy to forget that survival itself is often a miracle, and kindness, simple, sincere, uncalculated kindness, can be the force that makes survival possible. And all it took, in the end, was one day, one stranger, and a bouquet of flowers that carried far more than beauty. It carried a reason to begin again.